Imagine standing inside a centuries-old church long after the last prayer was spoken, the candles extinguished, the pews empty, and the echoes of worship replaced by a silence so heavy it feels deliberate. And before we go any further, let me ask you something unsettling. If churches are built to reach toward heaven, why do so many of them hide vast, sealed spaces beneath their floors? Spaces rarely mentioned, barely documented, and sometimes deliberately erased from official records. And tonight, as we begin this descent into forgotten crypts and church basements, we invite you into a world where architecture, secrecy, and belief intersect in disturbing ways. But before we continue, welcome to the channel where history's darkest corners are examined without filters. And if you value serious, well-researched true horror and unexplained history, subscribe now and join a growing community that dares to look where others refuse. Because beneath many churches lies not just storage or burial chambers, but an intentional underworld designed for purposes that were never meant to be seen by the congregation above. And as stone staircases spiral downward into darkness, explorers and historians alike report the same sensations. An immediate drop in temperature, a sense of pressure behind the eyes, and an inexplicable feeling of being watched, even in empty spaces. And historically, these basements served many roles, some practical, such as housing remains or reinforcing foundations, but others far more troubling, used for containment, secrecy, and ritual isolation, especially during eras when religious institutions wielded unchecked authority. And written accounts from medieval Europe described church crypts used not only for burial, but for interrogations, forbidden rites, and meetings held away from public scrutiny. And in many cases these spaces were intentionally designed to confuse intruders, featuring false corridors, sound-absorbing stone, and sealed chambers that could only be accessed by those who already knew they existed. And today, when urban explorers or researchers gain access, often illegally, they describe a near-universal experience of dread, as if these places retain a memory of what once occurred there, not as ghosts in the traditional sense, but as an emotional residue embedded in stone. And this first descent sets the tone for everything that follows, because once you cross the threshold beneath a church, the symbolism reverses. Heaven above, something else below, and the deeper you go, the more you begin to wonder whether these spaces were meant to hold the dead, or to hide the living, or something far worse. As we move deeper into historical records and eyewitness testimonies, a disturbing pattern begins to emerge, one that challenges the comforting assumption that church crypts were purely sacred or solemn spaces, because scattered throughout Europe and parts of the Americas are documented cases of clandestine gatherings held beneath churches, gatherings that did not align with official doctrine. And while many were dismissed as heretical rumors, others were quietly acknowledged through sealed trials, missing records, and abrupt architectural changes. And these underground meetings often involved secretive groups operating within or adjacent to the church itself. Individuals bound not by public faith, but by private belief systems that blended theology with forbidden practices. And in some crypts, researchers have discovered symbols carved into stone that do not correspond to known Christian iconography. Geometric markings repeated across multiple sites, hundreds of miles apart, suggesting coordination rather than coincidence. And according to preserved correspondence between clergy members from the 14th and 15th centuries, some church basements were designated as restricted sanctums, spaces where only select individuals could enter, often during specific lunar cycles or dates aligned with obscure feast days. And while modern scholars debate the nature of these gatherings, Eyewitness accounts from later centuries describe sounds rising from beneath church floors late at night, rhythmic chanting, metallic scraping, and low tones that resonated through the structure but could not be localized. And what makes these accounts unsettling is not just the sound itself, but the reaction of clergy who reportedly discouraged investigation, sealing staircases, bricking entrances, or relocating congregations entirely, and in several cases, entire churches were abandoned, following incidents involving unauthorized basement activity, leaving behind structures that stand empty to this day. And when modern explorers breach these sealed spaces, they often report finding remnants of ritual paraphernalia, scorched stone, unusual bone arrangements, and symbols that defy simple explanation, not overtly violent, but deeply unsettling in their precision. And the implication is clear that beneath places of worship, parallel belief systems may have existed, hidden in plain sight, protected by architecture, authority, and fear. And as these whispers grow louder, one question becomes unavoidable. If these rituals were not sanctioned, why were they allowed to continue for so long? And who was truly in control of what happened below? Beyond history and architecture lies something far more difficult to quantify: the persistent reports of presences that appear to inhabit these crypts long after all human activity ceased. And unlike traditional ghost stories that center on identifiable figures, the encounters described beneath churches are often vague, oppressive, and deeply personal. Explorers speak of sudden disorientation, overwhelming dread, and sensations of being surrounded despite empty corridors. And in numerous documented cases, electronic equipment malfunctions the moment researchers descend below a certain depth. Batteries draining instantly, audio recorders capturing low-frequency sounds not audible to the human ear, and thermal cameras detecting cold anomalies that move against airflow patterns. And skeptics argue environmental factors. But what unsettles even seasoned investigators is the consistency of reports across cultures and continents. People with no prior knowledge of a site describing identical sensations, pressure on the chest, intrusive thoughts, and a compulsion to leave immediately. And folklore surrounding these crypts often references entities that are not spirits of the dead, but manifestations tied to prolonged ritual activity, energy shaped by repeated intention over centuries. And while science has no framework for such claims, psychology acknowledges the power of environment on perception, especially in spaces associated with death, secrecy, and authority. Yet there are cases that defy psychological explanation entirely, including individuals who entered crypts without fear and emerged profoundly changed, reporting vivid nightmares, unexplained illnesses, or a sense of being followed that persisted for years. And local legends often warn against entering these basements alone, not because of physical danger, but because of what might attach itself invisibly. And whether one believes these are supernatural entities, psychological projections, or something yet unnamed, the effect is undeniable. These spaces do not behave like ordinary abandoned buildings. They feel active, aware, and resistant to intrusion, as if the ground itself remembers what was done beneath it. As investigators continue mapping forgotten church basements, one of the most disturbing discoveries is how frequently these spaces extend far beyond original blueprints, revealing hidden rooms, sealed tunnels, and passageways leading to locations far outside church property. And in many cases, these anomalies were not accidental but deliberate, constructed with advanced engineering knowledge for their time, designed to conceal movement, restrict sound, and prevent escape. And historians now believe that some crypts functioned as containment zones, holding individuals deemed dangerous, heretical, or inconvenient, while others may have served as secure meeting spaces for activities that could not withstand public scrutiny. And ground-penetrating radar surveys have revealed voids beneath churches that remain inaccessible even today, cavities that church authorities refuse to open, citing structural risk or lack of documentation. And when access is granted, investigators often find evidence of repeated modification, doors sealed, then reopened, passages redirected, symbols scratched out and replaced, suggesting ongoing use over generations. And perhaps most unsettling are reports of passageways that abruptly end in collapsed stone with no explanation, areas where explorers report sudden dizziness or fear preventing further progress. And whether this is structural instability or psychological response, it reinforces the sense that these spaces resist full exposure. And modern technology has only deepened the mystery, as thermal imaging sometimes reveals heat signatures in sealed areas where no biological life should exist, while audio equipment captures faint rhythmic sounds with no identifiable source. And as these architectural secrets come to light, they raise a troubling possibility that what we see above ground represents only a fraction of what churches were designed to contain, and that the true history of these institutions may be buried quite literally beneath their foundations. As we ascend back toward the surface, leaving behind the cold stone and suffocating silence of forgotten crypts, we are left not with answers, but with questions that refuse to fade. Because whether these spaces housed cults, secret rituals, psychological phenomena, or something beyond current understanding, the evidence suggests intentional concealment on a massive scale. And the enduring power of these places lies not in any single story, but in the consistency of unease they provoke across centuries, cultures, and belief systems. And perhaps that is the most unsettling realization of all, that sacred spaces, when abandoned or corrupted, do not simply become empty, they transform, absorbing the weight of human intention, secrecy, and fear. And today, as urban explorers, historians, and paranormal researchers continue to uncover what was hidden, the line between myth and history grows increasingly thin. And before we end, consider this. If institutions built to represent moral authority invested so heavily in secrecy beneath their foundations, what does that say about the truths we were never meant to know? And if you have encountered local legends, abandoned churches, or unexplained spaces beneath places of worship, share them respectfully in the comments, because these stories matter. And if this exploration resonated with you, subscribe for more in-depth journeys into hidden history and true unexplained phenomena. And as the final image fades into darkness, remember, some doors were sealed, not to keep people out, but to keep something in, and once uncovered, it may never truly rest again.